welcome to VMware Explore 2025, the virtually speaking podcast coverage. And John, this next guest, he's going to be a little bit of a troublemaker, I think.
Well, first off, I get really confused when we have more than one Pete. So maybe we should call him Phil or something. I don't know.
Evil Pete. Yeah. This is good Pete. And introducing Evil Pete to the podcast. Pete Koehler, welcome back.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And you, John, are certainly not the only one that has been confused over the years. This has been almost a decade-long bit of confusion.
A little bit of inside baseball, but we were on the same team for many years. And I learned a lot from you, Pete. Always a pleasure to have you on the Virtually Speaking podcast.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me.
Yeah. I want to do a little deep dive on some vSAN content. I know there's been some new announcements, as well as some of the stuff just around VCF 9. But also, I've had a couple of people tell me this week. I kid you not, and I'm not kidding. People have come up and said, "Man, I've learned so much from Pete Koehler. Like, the guy has got technical acumen, and I'm thankful that we have him." So yeah, you are appreciated, my friend.
Well, hey, look, I appreciate that they read and watch the things. So it's even better.
Absolutely. Speaking of watching things, you've had a couple of sessions this week with my good friend John Nicholson here. So why don't we talk a little bit about what those are? We'll leave some links to those for folks that are not here that can actually watch the sessions on demand. But what were you guys talking about this week?
Well, our first session was one that we usually get to do each and every year. It's sort of a design and operations session, and it's our chance to sort of share with our customers what do they need to really think about from a practical perspective on rolling out vSAN in their environment. And it's neat because it's not the same content each year. As the product changes, so do our recommendations, and so do maybe some of the mistakes that some of our customers make. And it's not necessarily their fault, but it's more about shaping the direction of maybe how they should roll out their data center.
Okay, well, this is a question for both of you then. Give me one example of something that has changed that from previous versions that you now are offering as recommendations.
Oh boy, what would you say? Maybe networking?
Yeah, and this is funny because I feel like previous sessions we would get bogged down on a lot of discussions about disks and where to place them and selecting drives and things like that. And I feel like a lot of that has become less of a concern as we move to all-NVMe and ESA. And instead, networking, and more networking.
Yeah.
And I was actually talking to someone who went to the session we did, and they're like, I thought I was just showing up for a storage discussion, and I now learned network architecture design. So it was a good bait and switch. I feel like.
No, that's good. But yeah, it was almost kind of a relief for John and I because we were able to remove some of these really esoteric sort of settings that you needed to
stripe with.
Yeah, mired down in, and we moved past that. So that was nice to see.
I like that.
Yeah, and then there was another session that I did that was focused on integration with VCF operations with vSAN. Now, we've had some integration over the years for a long time on that, but there's been really a renewed effort given the importance of VCF operations in a VCF environment. And, it's all about looking at the data center as a whole. That's what was so challenging historically in the past, and we've made a lot of good strides on that. So that was a great session. We were able to show a few demos, not only of what we have right now, but maybe what we're thinking about in the future as well.
Yeah, that's exciting, and there's a common theme in just that answer right there. The fact that we worked closely with all of these products as VMware before in the past, but it wasn't like it is now. Hock Tan came in and said, you will all be on the same division, you will all work on the same release cadence, and you will all get these things to work together. And the end result, essentially, is a much more stable product that can actually, with much more interoperability. Was that some of the stuff you covered on your session, or?
Yeah, absolutely. So we really focused on how would they look at their data center as a whole? What were some of the deficiencies of something just like looking at vCenter Server, individually? That was really geared for something like, looking at the discrete clusters, things like that.
Yeah.
But we know that a VCF instance can contain hundreds of clusters, thousands of hosts, multiple vCenter servers. How would they want to look at that holistically and sort through what are the important things that they should look at in the first place? And so in that particular case, I used a bit of an analogy about driving down the freeway, and we intuitively know what's important and what isn't important. Somebody's windshield wiper over on the car on the other side of the freeway really doesn't matter, but the car in front of you really, really matters. Something like VCF operations helps us sort through what is important and what isn't.
When I like from an operations basis, there's still a lot of great tactical troubleshooting tools down at the vCenter layer that you can chain and dive into. But there is, when you've got lots of clusters, you're trying to figure out where your hotspots are, what your capacity is doing, what those types of performance capabilities are. Having just a single one pager just to look at my storage's state, so to speak, and then go dive in and do performance diagnostics or other things is great.
Yeah.
Well, I cut my teeth on vSAN, the original storage architecture. We were the OGs, right? Original storage architecture.
That's right.
And now all these young kids are using this vSAN ESA. So has there been an uptick in that, or what's the update?
Yeah, I think the sort of the universal message that we've seen so far has been a dramatic upswing in the use of ESA. And I think it's really all about timing with regards to that adoption. We know that, many of our customers have hardware life cycles that are going to maybe be around the 3 or 4 year term or so. And we released vSAN ESA at about this time 3 years ago. So that sort of aligns with this hardware refresh, networking refresh, and the consistent messaging that we've had about why is it so much better. This is not just an incremental improvement. It's really about allowing us to give them features and capabilities that did not exist before. And that's something that's really worked out well for us.
Yeah, I think this was one of those secrets before we released vSAN ESA for years. I think we called it 2.0 internally, not officially, but like internally we used to refer to it as 2.0 for a long time. Like it took a while. Like they completely re-architected the entire setup. So
yeah, and what's interesting is I think when you work in the world of software and even hardware, sometimes you can have solutions that be overpromised a little bit. It's not unusual to see that sort of thing. I'm pretty confident in saying that vSAN ESA has not overpromised. It's actually delivered, and every single customer I've run into that's actually running ESA in their environment, they are meeting those expectations.
Yeah. It felt like with storage, you would go look at when someone would put out benchmarks, you're like, okay, which of the 4 corners is missing? Like, what are they hiding?
Yep.
While they're really focused on this one use case, they got link loan but not full. You'd always try to figure out what that gap was. And when I talk to people with ESA, it's I don't say how's your experience been, and it's been it's been great, but it's just been great. It's almost kind of a boring conversation in a lot of ways from an operational performance.
What has been the response have you been talking to anybody about global dedupe? Has that been something that's been coming up? I know that's fairly new.
Yeah, no, there's been a lot of interest in it, mostly in just understanding basically what it is, which is a natural sort of intuition.
Yeah, because that could be something like people have been talking about global dedupe, like storage vendors for years, and sometimes it's not the same thing. So
yeah, indeed. So they want to really understand what it is and how we've implemented it. And oftentimes, I think sometimes in the storage industry, we sort of get down in to the how we implement something because it's a trust issue. You want to understand how it works just so that you can roll it out in confidence. And so those have been some really interesting conversations, but ultimately where it matters most, it's all about saving costs. And it's storing more data in the same amount of resources. And that's what really matters. And so I think we've had some really interesting conversations so far around that.
Well, when I see the term global deduplication, it's a term that deduplication is often used when talking about primary vendors, because it's talking about, this frame does deduplication, or I do deduplication to this pool or whatever that is. But when I see global duplication, I often see that in the secondary storage space, like the backup, because people talk about, my pool of data domains here can globally dedupe or share hash tables across that. What's kind of the reality of that naming, and why was it chosen?
Yeah, and there was some challenges around the naming, some discussions around that naming, because what we wanted to really try to convey was the fact that global deduplication wanted to represent that you could have an entire boundary of resources, that being a cluster, and that the deduplication mechanism built in was going to use that as the deduplication domain. So everything that was within that cluster was going to have at least a chance to be deduplicated. And anytime you increase that deduplication domain, you're going to increase the probability of it being deduplicated, which increases the space efficiency and what you can reclaim from storage. So I think ultimately that's why we chose that name, but we do occasionally have to do some explanations on that it's a cluster-wide
solution. No, storage people, words have meaning. There's a thing to it, so I wanted to tease that out. But
yeah, global is global, absolutely, yeah. You've been working on the vSAN team for quite a few years now, and since then, we've moved into VCF, and vSAN is obviously part of VCF. Has that changed anything from your customer conversations? Like maybe, are you talking to customers that maybe were not vSAN customers before and are looking how to get to vSAN because now it's part of VCF? Yeah. Has that changed? I know you do a lot of customer conversations.
Yeah, and it's I didn't think about it at first, but I noticed a pattern with the conversations with our customers that they were really buying into it. And so I sort of had to sit back and think, well, what were some of the changes around that? Number one, licensing. And part of our understanding and being able to share with those customers that this is something that they already have. So if it's something that you already have, then it becomes a conversation of how might you be able to actually use it?
What's the incremental cost to get there? Like, what's the price of the drives?
Yeah, and it's with no offense to what they've purchased in the past or what they have in their existing state. It's just about opportunity to improve that efficiency of what they've already purchased, and that has had a really significant impact on how they see things, and sort of with that in the combination of being able to provide storage courtesy of vSAN, but it not necessarily be aggregated into the same cluster where the VM instances are at. That's also offered some flexibility, courtesy of vSAN storage clusters.
Yeah, I would imagine it's like, this is a story that kind of, applies to all things vSAN, but like when you get to take advantage of some of the software technology that's been around in native in vSphere, like deduplication, but also like DRS and HA, like these things, when you use VCF, you get to take advantage of all these. One that comes to mind with vSAN would be like taking advantage of some of the DR capabilities and stuff like that, because some of those are, using snapshots, part of vSAN.
Yep. Yeah, and that's where also too, it's sort of where this cohesive message kicks in, where you say, okay, so you have this hypervisor that's been managing all these other resources, great. So then we say, why not use it for your storage? Okay, that makes sense. And then you say, okay, well, this storage also has the ability to provide portability of that data, so you can protect it to a remote location for your DR scenarios, for any sort of like cyber resilience or ransomware protection. That is a really compelling and intriguing sort of notion.
Yeah.
And if I were sitting in the customer's shoes, I would see that and go, oh, so it's all as a single entity. It's all part of what I already have. And maybe that's where it's really resonating.
Yeah. Well, there was a tech preview this week, and I know we're not going to dive deep on it right now. It is a tech preview, and we will have you come back to actually give a much more deeper conversation around it. But tell me what we've heard about native storage in vSAN, object storage.
Yeah, no, just earlier today, in fact, we announced a tech preview of native S3 object storage provided by vSAN. Now, historically, vSAN always could provide S3 object storage, but it relied on third-party providers, partners who would provide that mechanism, and then it would be sort of loaded on to a vSAN cluster so that you could provide that instance. But over the course of the last several years now, in fact, we've heard from some of our customers that they wanted this ability just embedded in the product. In some ways, storage is storage from their perspective. They wanted to be able to consume it regardless of what sort of back-end mechanism was in place. And so it sort of made sense, and that's really what we've done with this first step in showing a tech preview where it's all natively built in to the product.
It's, if I look at public clouds and I look at what people consume, generally after compute, sometimes even ahead of compute, I feel like object storage is one of those first services in the catalog they're looking for. And going into my, VCF automation and looking for that object storage in the catalog, that's something I assume a lot of people are going to want to take advantage of.
Yeah, and especially when our customers have workloads that are much more diverse. They may have containers where they have persistent volumes, and those persistent volumes should be on native S3 object store. Whatever the case may be. So I think it really will open up a lot of flexibility for our customers, and several use cases. No, but I would certainly love to be back when we have a little bit more information that we can share with our customers about that.
Yeah, and until then, I will be looking forward to the beautiful PowerPoints that you build around this architecture and the very technical blogs that you'll be writing about this, as you always do. Yeah. So Pete, thanks for the content you build. Thanks for coming on Virtually Speaking today, and enjoy the rest of your week.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.